So here, taking a look at circumference of a circle, the circumference of the circle is essentially the perimeter of a circle. Okay, we don't call it perimeter because perimeter deals with adding up all the sides, and really a circle doesn't have sides; it has one continuous curve. Okay, and so we use a different name for it, but it means the same thing. It's the distance around the outside of this thing. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about circumference. And circumference, the formula is 2 pi r, so 2 times pi times the radius, or we could think of it as pi d, so pi times the diameter. All right. Either one of these is the same thing, and the reason for that is because, well, right here, 2 times r, well, that is the diameter. Okay, and so that's why either of these works. Most students prefer just to remember one of these, and if you're going to remember just one of these formulas, the first one is a little bit more universal. Okay, because we could always find the radius, and the radius is used in other things. Okay, so 2 pi r is the one that we tend to remember, and that's a good thing. Okay. For pi, you could use the pi button on your calculator, or we could use 3.14 as our decimal approximation of that. Okay. For example, if we look at something like this guy, it says find the circumference, and so for this one, what's given here is the radius. And so if the radius is given as 5, well, I'm going to use the formula circumference equals 2 pi r. And since I have the radius, I just plug this in. I say, okay, r is a 5. And a lot of times what will happen is we'll multiply this guy. So I'll do the 2 times the 5 first, so I'll get a 10. And so 10 pi is a way that sometimes you'll see the circumference expressed when we're talking about exact values of the circumference. But for our purposes this time, I want to plug this in and kind of round it off, okay? So real quickly, if you use 3.14 on your calculator to round off pi, here's the value you're going to get. So if you use 3.14, you're going to get 31.4, and that's centimeters. If you use the actual pi button on your calculator, you'll get 31.4159, something like that, which also rounds to 31.4 if we're doing one decimal place. But the thing about that is, obviously it has more decimal places that we can see when we use that pi button on the calculator. When we punch it in, literally the 3.14 just gives us this, but the pi button actually gives us something that looks more like this, okay? When we list the whole thing in terms of what the calculator displays, okay? So it'll give us more decimal places, and when we start to get into more complicated problems, it'll give us slightly different decimals as well sometimes as these things kind of add up. Okay, so just keep that in mind. If I look at the next one, they give us the diameter this time. So you can either use the formula circumference equals pi d for pi times diameter, which in this case would be, let's see, a 12. So it's 12 pi, which I can then plug into my calculator. Or I could use the circumference equals 2 pi r once again. I just have to look at this and say, okay, well, what is the radius of this thing? And we would probably go, well, the diameter is 12, so the radius is 6. So I plug a 6 in for my radius. And once again, when I simplify this, it still gives me the same thing of 12 pi, okay? And so once again, I plug this into my calculator, the 12 pi. If I use the pi button, it gives me a 37.7 when I round it off. If I use 3.14, it looks like it also gives me a 37.7 rounded to the nearest decimal, okay?